Ma'am, a student has already joined, almost 26, 27 students have joined. Let us stick to the time and we can start after one or two.
I think let's start. If anybody will join, well,
Let them join, but you can start. We stick to the time because already three.
yeah. So in the previous section, I think we have told many things. Sorry, I have told many things. So maybe some of the concept is just like over to your head, but it's okay. Actually, the whole purpose of this workshop is to give you some introduction to some of the methods so that you can know, okay, these things we can do, these things maybe we might not do. So just to introduce you some of the applications and the functions, how they will work. And not only you will do for the image things, apart from the image also, if any person wants to continue some theoretical research to develop any kind of models or something, that also welcome. So the whole purpose of my presentation, the previous class was that. So anyway, we'll start from that part. What we have already out of these all 8 steps, which steps we have already finished in the previous session. We have already discussed how to prepare the data set and what could be our input and all those things, and also what are the important classes or the packages we need to install or import, and creation of layers like details about the convolutional layers and what is the use of filters, padding, stride, and how many convolutional number of convolutional layers we needed, all those things. And as well as then after this like the dropout, dense layer, all those concepts regarding to the layer, we have concept we have already like covered. Next we go for the step 4, which is the compilation of the model. So when we go for the compilation model, actually here the hyperparameters is coming to the picture. So what are exactly the hyperparameters? Uh, Broadly, the hyperparameters divided into two parts. One is related to network structure, which is equal to number of hidden layers. Hidden layers is nothing but your convolutional layers, your pooling layers, all those things. And number of hidden units. Hidden units means inside your layers, like we use how many number of filters, what could be the size of the stride, what could be the whether we are going to use padding or not, and activation functions like the one I have shown it to you is the ReLU. Except ReLU, there are other functions like CELU and all those tannets, sigmoids, softbacks. So are like what are the effect of those activation function, and also the dropout. Like I have already discussed like different types of dropout, neuron dropout, connection dropout, and also how can like randomly through max pooling and other those things we can drop out. So some researchers have already developed this part. So this part, like we can call it hyperparameters. What does mean by hyperparameters means to increase the model accuracy, or to not accuracy, actually to increase the model performance. It's not like we'll just take the default architecture and we just trained within our data set and we expect it will give us the accuracy. No, we should change something. We need to tune something. The right word for this one in our manuscript we generally write it like hyperparameter tuning. Tuning means we need to tuning those network structure parameters or the network training parameters. The structure parameter we have already discussed in the previous class, like you can modify those parameters. Now we are going to discuss about the network training. So that network training means some other parameters like batch size, epoch, learning rate, momentum, all those part we are going to discuss. And from there, compilation of the considering those network training related parameters, we start the compilation, the program compilation will start. So the step is the compilation of the model. So the function is model.compile, And the first one is the loss function. Here, as I have used the Keras one, so like Keras, that loss binary cross entropy. This is first the loss function. Then these are all the function I am discussing just step by step. So let's focus on what is the loss function. The loss function is specifying the type of loss in the network. So you can ask me what is loss exactly? What is the loss function? Generally, it used. Uh, we need to this loss function helps us to find out what is our loss. Means always our aim is to achieve. Always every model's aim is to achieve 100% accuracy. It is always try to achieve always 100% accuracy. Okay. But in some cases, let's say we achieve accuracy 90%. Then what could be our loss? It's like 10%. Okay. That's the loss. So best if there is a loss, then model of course tune itself, optimize itself to back propagation or something, so that it can gives us the better accuracy. It is mathematics, so it is easy for us to calculate. Okay. The aim is 200, we are getting 90 or 85, the 80, the rest is our loss. But how model can calculate? The model can calculate using some loss function. If you are a binary class you are using, then the concept is the binary cross entropy. If we go for the multi-class, then the function is the categorical cross entropy. That you please keep in your mind. Based on also classes, you can also change your loss function. So here I have given one table actually. Many times students asked us like what could be the suitable loss function, because there are many loss function. So based on that, I made this table. Here actually, if we'll go for a regression problem, like for if sometimes for not exactly the image data, for some like some textual data, when we go for some regression method, for example, if we want to predict the price of a house, or if we want to predict the size of a tumor, so in such cases we are going for the regression analysis. In that cases, if we'll go, then mostly we use this four type of, either it is a mean square error or mean absolute error, Hoover loss, or log causality, but mostly mean square error is used. If we go for a binary classification, dog, cat, or disease, not disease, tumor, non-tumor, in this case, binary cross entropy is the mostly used one. Like most of the people that are using binary cross entropy, or hinge loss, or focal loss, or dice loss. So in these four loss are more appropriate. And if it is the multi-class problem, we can go for the categorical cross entropy, or we can go for sparse categorical cross entropy. This is now currently it is now very much popular, sparse categorical cross entropy. Then we have KL divergence, or also the sparse max loss. So mostly the people are using categorical cross entropy, or if it is not giving good accuracy for multi-class, then they go for the sparse categorical cross entropy. And if you are using autoencoder for some class, if you are not using autoencoder concept, then you can use MAC by cross entropy or perceptual loss. Now GAN is very popular. Generative Adversarial Neural Network is very popular for the generation of the synthetic image. Okay, so for that one, if we go for some kind of loss function, mostly adversarial loss is like more appropriate, or we go for L1 or L2 loss, or Wasserian loss, or maybe least square loss, but mostly adversarial loss is used. If you go for object detection, that one we'll discuss in the next session, but as we are using the discussing the loss function here, so just I put, if you go for the object detection, the IOU loss is the common one. When object detection is started, we generally go for the IOU loss, but focal loss is now most appropriate. That we will discuss also why when we go discuss it in the next class, like in the next week. Then L1, smooth L1 loss, or GIOS. GIOS is like the generalization IOU loss. This is embedding problems actually we are not using here, so this is not important. This is for like more, like embedding problem actually currently people are using. If one image and another using when they are going for some image registration. Actually today morning, one professor asked the question like if the ultrasound image is there, can we take also CT image of some normal patients and we can ultrasound image and the CT. Also, some of the works currently done like CT and MRI image people are taking, and they are now merging the concept of CT and MRI and generating new image actually. In that cases, you have can consider like contrastive loss or centered loss. So this embedding problems is there. So this is the use of loss function. Loss function is your model need to calculate it what is the loss of the network considering this data set. So these are some kind of loss function you can consider. Then the next part is coming the optimizer. Okay. So what is the use of optimizer? Here the optimizer I mentioned is the Adam. So the optimizer is nothing but it helps to find out to optimize the problem. Okay. So here I put in the English that it is an algorithm or method that used to minimize an error function. Okay. Or the loss function we generally call to maximize the efficiency of the production. The loss function will gives us the loss. So after getting the loss, somebody or something is there which can minimize the loss and optimize the problem. That's why we are using the optimizer. So the role of the optimizer is always our aim is to reach at the minimum. Minimum means where our loss is zero. Zero means 100% accuracy. So that DL the DW means derivative of loss is equal to zero. So that one is like the, because this is the function Wi minus alpha by dE minus dWi. Actually, this is one derivative one, where this is the initial weight, this is the intermediate weight, and this is the optimal weight. That one is like more theoretical. You forget all those things. Here, I want you to focus like why would optimizer up to minimize the loss function. When we got the loss function is very high or the value of loss very high, then through optimizer we can minimize the loss function. Always our aim is to make reach at the minimum. So DL and DW, we get the value 0 here. This is the minimum one. Okay. You got the optimizer. Then the next part is the learning rate. You see but there are also many optimizer I have already shown in the introduction section. Like we have stochastic gradient, we have RMS prop, we have many actually. So most Adam is used. As you see, there is a concept of learning rate. What is the use of learning rate? Learning rate actually is a very important parameter. Learning rate is like always, if I'll say like an example of English example, always our aim is to reach at this minimum one here. And this is our maximum one. Here our loss is very high or error is very high. From high to low, how many steps we need to take? Like this one will be taken by to reach at the minimum. That one we generally call this is like our lulling rate. Like number of steps taken here, how many? Like from 1, 2, 3, 4 to reach at the minimum. So what's the learning rate? Learning rate is like how speed or how fast or like what should be our particular speed so that we can reach at the minimum or so our loss function is reduced. So always the usual range is 0.0 to 1.0. Always our aim is to reach from maximum to the minimum, and that one is possible by through learning rate. Optimizer will help us to find out the optimizing strategy, and learning rate is the steps we need to take to reach at the minimum. Okay, then what could be the appropriate learning rate we should take? It should be 0 or 0.1 or 0.1. Generally the students makes the common mistakes. They're making the, because it is a the learning rate is just like the learning parameter. It will learning all your features and everything. If we giving the learning rate is too low, what is the problem? Means you are at the hill top, okay, and you need to reach at the hill bottom. Then if the learning rate is too low, then the problem is you always like take infinite time to reach here. You will get the local minimum. Definitely, you will get the local minimum, sorry, global minimum, but you will take like infinite time. If you too slow learn, like learning with 0.00001, like you might say, oh, my model should learn very good. No, no, no. It will take like your training speed, the training time, it will like so much. And it will take too high. Too high means maybe 0.01. So that the model will, like oscillate. Oscillate means you imagine now you are at top of the mountain. You need to go to the bottom of the mountain. If you will speed, like if you will run through like very speed, it might chance that you might, pass this button and somewhere else you find, somewhere when you are, we are running at a very like a at a very last speed, sometimes we missed what is our destination. Sometimes go ahead from our destination. So that one is always a problem. So should not be your learning rate should not be too less or not should not be too high. So always take it just right learning rate. And another thing is like this one is little bit theory. Sometimes we got the learning rate in such a way that we always need to find out a global minimum. Global minimum means our learning rate should be sorry, our accuracy should be like 100 like always should be 99 95% or 96% like that. We should see that pattern. Sometimes what happened, our we choose the learning rate in such a that our models see the accuracy like maybe after 2 3 epoch, oh we got 95% 96%. Sometimes the student stop the epoch or the program there. They said, oh we got 95%. No, 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 we should run it for some more epoch and you can see, okay, what is your accuracy when you got 95 and 96 for after 2 3 rounds you stop, then you reach a minimum. You can say, okay, I am getting very very less loss or 1 to 2%. It can be manageable, but generally we call it as a local minimum because you can say like it is a mountain type of area, like many mountains. Your always aim is to reach the minimum, global minimum, which is the minimum part. Not at if somewhere you reach here, actually this part we call it as the local minimum, which is the bad move. Or sometimes it, like it costs. Here you find like after 95% your accuracy is just like 95, 95, 95, 95, 95, 95. No increase, no decrease. That point we also called a saddle point. Okay. You find like there is a plane, but this is not actually a plane. After that, actually your global minimum. So that one you also look from your pattern of the accuracy you are getting. So now that like there are different type of optimizer. I have just saying like what are the advantages and limitation and which application you have used. If we are use the gradient descent, actually gradient descent is the first optimizer has been developed by the researcher. Advantages is easy to understand, easy to implement, but limitation it cannot achieve global minimum. Means most of the time this gradient descent we reach at the local minimum. Okay, and also cannot overcome the sad point. Means in this point we cannot overcome. And also then the gradient descent persons, the same researchers, they have developed stochastic gradient descent. Stochastic gradient are frequent updates of model parameters, and it requires less memory. These are the advantages. But the limitation, it will like complicates to converse exact the minimum. Okay, it may not go to the local minimum, but it also may not reach the global minimum. And also it cannot overcome the saddle point, and frequent updates are computationally expensive because there are frequent updates of parameter. Then we go for the mini batch gradient. There are also some advantages and also some disadvantages, and also momentum. These are like some of the theory. Then we go for the ADAGRAD. ADAGRAD also now some of the researchers are used, I found in the medical application. Here the advantages is learning rate changes adaptively. That one is also one of the things like with suppose you are giving your learning rate 0.001, but with ADAGRAD, it is programmed in such a way that the algorithm is written in such a way that even if you are giving the learning rate 0.001 and it is not applicable to your environment, then somehow it can adjust or adapt to your learning rate, and able to train the sparse data as well. Sparse data means like when there is a not that much differentiation of your data. Of course, causing learning rate decay and early stopping because as it is changes the learning rate like adaptively. So sometimes after sometimes like it can say, okay, we got the output, so it is like early stopping. Your program is stopped early, but always your program should run for some several rounds so that you can get a better outcome. Then we have ADA Delta RMS FOP also. They have also learning rates gets adjusted automatically. Slow learning and computational expensive because they are adaptively changing the learning rate. So at every time the learning rate is changing, so it is like a slow process and computationally expensive. But Adam is like mostly used one, and many people are used. I think 90% of the researchers. Easy to understand, computationally efficient, and little memory is requirements. But slow convergence is there. But there is a trade-off. You need a faster convergence or slow convergence. Stochastic gradient is a faster convergence, but the problem is you high chance you reach at a local minimum. This one, it will take slow convergence, but chances high you will reach the global minimum. So that also you need to keep in your mind, like which optimizer function will give you the better accuracy. That's why the mostly preferred one, ADA delta, RMS proper, ADAM1. Mostly ADAM1 is used. So this is actually one paper. They have actually compared different optimizer with different accuracy, and they have also found Adam and with their total time. There's like within 7 hour 20 minutes, Adam can converge. If we compare it to other one, it is like also this is one from one paper. Here they have considered everything like all the optimizers, and they can find out if this is our local minimum who is reaching fast. Let's say like another time if we'll run, we can get to know. Okay, wait, maybe I'll go a little back. Here you can see fast will reach the fast, it will reach, although other data, other data is reaching there. Here you see out of this ADA delta is reaching fast. And if we'll go for this one, then who overcome the saddle point? Like this is some visual perception, like considering all those parameters. Here we can say who can overcome the saddle point fast, ADA delta. So this is like one visual comparison of different parameters. Now after the hyperparameter tuning, like all those things we discussed about the optimizers, learning rate, and loss function. Now we'll go for feeding image to the CNN. So feeding, when we are going to now our images there, now that training set we should feed to the CNN. Otherwise, what CNN will learn? So for that one, if you want to go for a data augmentation, like I have already discussed why we need data augmentation, we need for three purposes. The first thing is if our data size is very small, and the second thing is if we want to add some variation among the data, and the third thing is to overcome the data overfitting. So if you want to use some kind of augmentation, then this is one is your training data. You'd like add some kind of like rescaling, searing, zooming, horizontal flipping. It's up to you. Then you will also do some kind of for the validation data. Generally, we are not giving much like the augmentation. Only we go for the rescaling. Rescaling is what's that? Because when we download the data or when raw data, maybe the scale of the image or the size of the image of different sizes, or so make it as like the pixel value to a certain range. So we just divided by 1/255 to normalize only the pixel values. Then after that, we need to give that data. So this trained data generator now flow from the directory is the function. So here the data set is my folder name, and this is the training set. Inside the training set, I have the images. Then the target size is 227 plus 227. This target size is just like what could be your input size? Your input size, like for the AlexNet is 227. But if you go for the VGG16 and ResNet, this size is like 224 plus 224. Here I have already mentioned side of the image supported by the model. So here you need to give and the batch size. The batch size is like the total number of training examples present in a single batch. Here I have given batch size is equal to 2. Batch size is a very important parameter or hyperparameter is in the network development. What is that batch size? Batch size is suppose you have 100 images. You want to show if for example I will tell you I will give you 100 images at a time. I'll show you these are some 100 images. Try to find out which one is dog, which one is cat. You will take infinite time. At a glance, if I'll say within 5 minutes, can you show which one dog, which one is a cat? It is difficult for you because at 100 images at one glance is difficult for you to read the features and everything, and let me know which one is cat and which one is dog. However, at every round, I will show you on two images. And that 100 images, I will divide it in the batch of two. So that I have 50 batches. And like in every image, so if it is dog or cat, it is dog or cat, then you can also know, okay, I can easily know, okay, it is a dog image or it is a cat image. So that one is the concept of batch size. Instead of showing the whole the data to the model, why not with certain batches? And some students also asked me, so ma'am, it is okay if we'll give the less batch size so model will learn good? No. That also depend upon your data size. We always advise to the students if you have very high number of data, like number of samples, maybe 10,000, then please increase your batch sizes. Why? Because 10,000 images, if you'll give two batch, and if only two images you will show to the system will already, when it will from image one, when it will reach to the 10,000, like the 500 batches, it already forget what are the features it has learned in the second or third batch from the images. So it's just like that. It is a time taking, and there is a high chance of model forgetting those parts. We generally, I forgot the name. What's that we called? That is a very good name for that. When the model forget those parts, vanishing gradient problem. Sorry, the problem we generally call the vanishing gradient problem. And if we make the very high batch size, maybe suppose you have 10,000 image, we generally, if we make the batch size maybe 100,000, 2,000, that also very much like problem. Because of 100, 1,000 images you show to the machine at a time, that also confuse. Generally, we go for multiplication of 2, 64, 16, 64, 128, 256, 512, I think, or 1024. I think maximum 1024 you should go when you have 20,000 or 30,000 of images. So that part you always also check what should be your appropriate batch size. Then the class mode. Class mode is like if you go for a binary classification, you go for binary, and if it is like a multi-class, you should make it as a categorical. Here, instead of binary, you make it categorical. And if you print this train set, it will show you found 2 to 1 images belonging to 2 classes, because in that folder I have totally pinged 2 to 1, 2 to 1. It's saying like find 2 to 1 images belonging to 2 classes. Then here for the send for the validation one, for the validation directory, I have validation set. This is the target size, and this is the batch size. This is the class mode, and it found 46 images belonging to 2 classes. You will print this. Then after that, fitting the CNN model to the pre-processed augmented image. Now you have already some kind of augmented image in the training set. So this the model, the function name is fit generator. Then training set is like all your images. Then steps for epoch and epoch. Okay, first we'll discuss about the epoch. Okay, what is epoch? Epoch is one epoch is when an entire data set passed forward through the neural network only once. Means you can say epoch one means like one round. Suppose you have 100 images, suppose, and you have, let's say, 10 batches, so that in epoch one means round one. In one round, first you want to show 10 that 100 images with 10 batches. In second round or epoch two, all 100 images model is going to show going to see through these 10 batches. If epoch is equal to 3, means the third round, all the 100 images model is going to see through 10 batches. So that one is the epoch, like how many rounds or how many times you want to show your 100 images to the machine. So the thing is, what could be the epoch one? Okay, epoch value. Actually, it also depends on why we need the epoch, like more number of rounds. It might chance that in every round might not the machine will get the exact output, the exact, all the features, which like if to classify a cat and dog, let's say we need some features, maybe one round is not appropriate. That's why we generally go for more number of epoch, so that the machine can learn all the features quite good. But and then what is the steps for epoch? Steps for epoch is like the number of batches need to complete one epoch. Here is the formula between the batch size and the steps for epoch. The total number of training sample, let's say you have 10 and your batch size is 2, then the total number of steps is 10 over 2, like 5. Let's say you have like 10 images in one epoch. You want to show the 10 images and your batch size is like 2, then how many steps you need to show that one, the number of to finish this 10, number of steps would be 5. Step 1, 2 batch. Step 2, another 2. Step 3, another 2. Step 4 and 5, like this. So that you can complete this 10 images at one epoch with number of steps 5, and the batch size is equal to 2. That is the steps per epoch. And this is like the validation data you are giving. After the model is trained, it will verify with the validation data. Then this is our model creation is finished. Okay. So then our model training will start when we will run it. Then These are the list of hyperparameters you need to be tuned to increase your accuracy. Mostly batch size, epoch, steps per epoch, optimizer, learning rate, activation function, and dropout rate. These are like the most common hyperparameters first we are doing to increase the performance of the model. Generally, we check these values. So now the next question is, how can we know which hyperparameters will gives us the better accuracy? Uh, Actually, through programmatically currently scikit-learn gives us like the thing is like the I forgot the name, hyper of one that function. It can, like ultimately gives us the better hyperparameter values. But instead of this, if we will go for the actually by ourselves the the hyperparameter tuning, the first method will go for the grid search. Actually, what is the grid search? Grid search means, let's say we have one hyperparameter one and hyperparameter two. So we will just like go for like this and this. It's just like we'll have some, let's say we have some like the epoch value. We have 5, 10, 15, 20. For example, this one is epoch 5, epoch 5. This one, sorry. This one is epoch 10. This one is epoch 20, like this. Here, let's say I have batch size. I have batch size 2. I have batch size 4. So we'll go for a grid search. First, I will consider the batch size 2 and I will see the impact of this one. What at that time when my epoch is 10, when my epoch is 20. So constant one, check one. Like this is grid wise. Then take this value, then check this one. Like grid wise, okay? You will make constant of one hyperparameters and at that time change other hyperparameter values. So, and what could be the input? That's one we call like the grid search. So what is the grid search? The pros is like the maps out the problem space and provide more opportunity for optimization, because you will just you make constant one parameter, at that time you are changing other parameters. But cons is the disadvantages is it can be slow for large number of hyperparameters. This one is two hyperparameters is easy, but let's say we have 8 to 10 hyperparameters. So at that time, every hyperparameter particular pattern randomly we will consider. Maybe one hyperparameter will change at a time another hyperparameter will change. Then another time another hyperparameter will change. So this one we call as the random search. So here is like the advantages, each provides higher accuracy with less training cycles, because we will go for like a random one. Who knows? We'll get lucky, and with the with the while we are changing the parameter, we got the best set of parameters. Okay. But the disadvantages is unintuitive, okay? Because we don't know, because if someone asked us like why you said this learning rate 0.001, why you are considering batch size 8, why that value? Because we are using random search, so sometimes it's difficult to explain why we are considering these values. So this one is like the random search problem. Another one is like how random search will work. Like first we'll take randomly some value and check the pattern. So like this. Or currently now for some industrial applications, people are using probabilistic search, but it's just like very high-end applications. Like they have using at some probability, they are changing one hyperparameter and checking what are the effects of the other parameters. So it is mostly used like for the industrial operations. So these are like different types of search we can do for our hyperparameter optimization. Then the most thing is like what problems we might like see in our code. The first one is the overfitting problem. Like I have already discussed to you, overfitting problem means like when your training accuracy is very high, but your validation accuracy and testing accuracy is not at all good. So that time we call overfitting. Means if we always train with my front side of the picture and you want to test with my lateral side or my back side of the picture, then with the front side you get 100% accuracy, but when you will test with my back side or lateral side, you might not get good accuracy. That we call overfitting problem. So in some cases, some students tell us might like even if we are also facing the same situation, the training accuracy is 100%, but the validation or the testing accuracy is not quite good. At that time we say, oh, the model is seriously overfitting. So at that time, what we need to do, the first one is the early stopping. Early stopping means is what? When you find out there is not much increase in your accuracy, suppose after 5 epoch or after the 6 epoch, you see like your accuracy or some kind of like your training or testing accuracy is either decreasing or kind of like in the same state, like is 90, 91, 92, 93. Then where you get the 90, you need to stop here, like not 91, 92, 90, 90.02 or 90, 90, 90. When that it means that much your like the capacity of your model, then at that epoch or that step you need to fix, okay, that's the end, you need to stop your model. That we generally call like the early stopping. Like we need to stop our model training when the loss and validation data set starts to increase. Okay, means the loss increase means what? The accuracy is going to be reduced. So that generally we call it as the early stopping, or we go for the data augmentation that we have already discussed many times. If it is overfitting, we need to give the data set from different angle, from different perception, so that our model will get to know the features from different types, like from different direction. Then this one is the overfitting. Then the underfitting. Underfitting means neither your training accuracy is good, nor your testing accuracy is good. Means your model is learning nothing. If even if we found some data sets, when we consider our is always 30, 40% or 50% is, it will not increase. Whatever we will do, it will not increase that part. So that one is called that the underfitting problem. In order to avoid the underfitting problem, you need to increase the number and the size of the parameters. Like you need to increase number of filters and those parts, increase the complexity of the model. Complexity of the model means some students, they are taking 2, 3 layers of convolutional layers. I always said more number of convolutional layers means higher feature extraction. So I always advise them, we always tell them, okay, please increase the number of convolutional layers and also increase the training time. With They need to submit their homework. So at that time they just stopped, with 10 epoch they stopped the network, and they just said, oh ma'am, we achieved 65% accuracy with 10 epoch. I said, oh no, how about 15 epoch? I said, oh no ma'am, it was just 10 epoch we got 65. I said, no, we should increase the number of epoch to see if it is 15 epoch, what could be the impact. So that one also you need to see. Okay, this is all about the CNN. Now I should show you the code demo for the like the hands-on, but unfortunately I cannot connect it to the GPU because it is Sunday, and I think the GPU is closed there. But however, I will show you the code bit by bit, because here I have already discussed you the code, but I just want to show you another time how the coding structure is there. For example, this one is like the binary BJJ16 code. This one like the one, all the functions, like all the libraries or all the optimizers, like everything you need to import there, the packages. Then you need to, as it is the BJJ16, and this is the default site 224 cross 224. This is the input shape we need to give. Then I've already mentioned the model is sequential. So here we need to mention the sequential is here. Then the layers, the fast convolutional layers. Here the number of filter is 64. The size is 3 cross 3. The kernel size, like each filter contains some kernels. Then the input shape, is the size. Then the padding. Here padding is same, means we have not given any padding. And then the activation function is ReLU. This is the first convolutional layer. This is the second convolutional layer. And for the max pooling layer, we have considered the pool size 2 cross 2 and stride 2 cross 2. Similarly, this is my second convolutional block. This is my third convolutional block. This is my fourth convolutional block. Like this, I have all the layers, all the convolutional layers. Then after the convolutional layers, we have discussed about the flatten layer. Then this is the function of the flatten. Okay. Then after the flatten, we have dense layer. Then here, this is my dense layer, and 4096 is the neurons here. And this is the activation function, ReLU. And this is by another dense layer. Then this is the final dense layer. Here I put 1. Why 1? Because it is a binary classification. Here I can put 1 or I can put 2 here. It's okay because it is a binary one. Then if I want to put the model summary, I can put. Then for the model compilation, here I mentioned my loss is binary cross entropy. The optimizer is equal to Adam with learning rate 0.001. And yes, this part we have not discussed. The matrix is accuracy because I want to optimize the model on the based on the accuracy, but not exactly here because this is a demo model. I just put an accuracy, but here you can change it to there are many performance metrics: accuracy, precision, recall, F1 score, sensitivity, so MCC, there are many actually. So through this, we can evaluate the performance of the model. Then after that, if I want to go for data augmentation, so here I just put for this part rescaling, shearing, zooming, and horizontal flipping to my data. Then this is the validation data. I just go for the rescaling only. Then for my training set, from the data set is the folder. Inside this, I put the training set. Then this is my target size because I am considering BGG 16, so 224 cross 224. I'm talking about the default network, okay? The batch size is 2 and class mode is binary. So like this one is for my validation set. Then this is the model fit. I have passed my training set. This is my steps for epoch. This is the epoch, and this is the validation steps, and this is the validation data. Validation steps is like after how many steps you want to show the validation result. This one is not that much important. It's for to show your output. So after your model is trained, so once your model is trained, like every time you want to test the data, so once the model is trained, you need to store somewhere. So here, like I store it like in a H5 file. So then I save this one. Then if I want to test one image, so here like I passed like the doc.jpg, then it will show me whether if it can print whether it is a dog or whether it is a cat. Here I put if my prediction equal to 1, the label is dog. If my prediction equal to 0, then it is a cat. Or I can show also another type here. If I'll go to show you this one, what exactly that part is like that. When I pass my test image, like doc.jpg, then here you can see this one is like my image to array I converted. Then when I my model dot predict, because my model is already trained, and when I predict, then it will show, okay, it is 1. 1 means why it is a dog. How can I know? Because previously I have already checked, because for us it is a dog and cat, but for the model it might not be a dog or might not be a cat. It can only know the binary value. So it like in the 0000 form. So for the cat, it is taking 0, and for the dog, it is taking 1, because I have printed what class indices it has already taken. So as I have passed a dog.jpg, then here you can see the model is predict it is 1, means it is dog. Or if I can predict we can design the output in such a way that if you want to see, like if the prediction is equal to 1, then it can show like it is a dog or it is a cat. It is showing dog. Or also we can take the OpenCV to make it more beautiful. We can take the image, and instead of also we can print the label, it is a dog image. So it is like some kind of like output way. How can we show to the machine? How can we get the output from the machine? This one is like the binary one. If we go for the BGG multi-class, everything is same. One and like the difference is here you can see in the last layer, because it is a 3 class, I have considered cat, dog, and monkey. Here that's why I am putting it 3. If you are taking a multi-class cat, dog, and monkey, if you will make here 1 or 2, then the model will give you the error. So always the last layer is the number of classes. And another one is here, as it is multi-class, here I am considering the loss function categorical cross entropy. But here in the binary one, I have used the binary cross entropy. This is also one difference. And another difference here you can see, for the class mode, here is the categorical, but in the binary one, the class mode we have considered is the binary. So for the multi-class one, just only like a small changes. Otherwise, it's like, okay, rest of the thing is just similar. But the prediction one, like I have considered like cat, dog, and monkey. So it will predict this one. So this one is like the default BGG 16. The layering structure here we have considered is whatever the like the sub developed is like this. However, if someone not use this one and will go for the customization, this one also we have customized for one of one. What we have done, we have also designed a classifier sequential, and we just add one convolutional layer, only 32 number of filter of size 3 cross 3, and this is our input shape 64, 64 plus 3, and activation is the ReLU. Then our max pooling. Then we have another convolutional layer and the max pooling. Then after two convolutional layers, we have our flattened layer. Then we have dense layer with 128. I have put only one dense layer with size 128 number of neurons and activation function ReLU. Then my final layer is the like one because it's the binary. So the last layer I can put one, and the activation function I have used SIGINT, and rest of the things similar. So here also I want to see the layering structure is very important in the CNN. So here I like this is my customization. I have not followed any particular architecture. You just follow like from my perception. I have maintained the CNN, the layers and the filters and everything. That also you can, if anybody want to generate the code from the scratch, they can also do. So this is like some, I will share this code later, then you can learn in your, we are like, I will modify this code so that using the Google Colab, you can join it because currently it is connected to the GPU. And I think on Sundays, the GPU might not run in that university. So I cannot run this code, but this is the code. You please try to understand the code. If you run, you can just only see the output. Actually, the output will just show you the one I have shown it to you. It can show you just like this, the dog. Okay, so this part, we have just covered the part of the CNN, how we have just designed a CNN model and what could be the output. The first part we have considered. Then the second part, we will move to the transfer learning. What is the transfer learning and why it comes to the picture? Okay, some researchers after when it is very popular, like the CNN architecture is very popular in 2018 or 19, but around 2020 researchers said, why will go for this many layers, creation and everything? Why not, if someone is already used this, already created some model and created some architecture, why not reuse the things? Okay, it's just like if you want to make your house from the scratch, it's good. That's very good. No problem. Or if someone has already built your house, maybe builder or something, you just pay the money and stay there with little bit interior modification. Then that also quite good. Some people wants to do the like everything from the scratch, like buy the land, make the house and everything. Some people they said, why will take that burden and that botheration? We can just buy it um, from the enterprise, so that we no need to like take this much of labor the things. So that one actually the concept of transfer learning is somebody already like for some images and for some concepts already made the model and already freeze that model. We just call that model based on that our data set, and no need to write this many layers, this many code, only the take advantages of already built model. So that one we generally call the pre-trained CNN models. If you remember today morning, I have said we have one default architecture, we have one customized CNN model, then we have one pre-trained CNN model. So this one is like our pre-trained CNN model. Someone is already trained the CNN model with some kind of data set. So why we need transfer learning, okay, or why we need pre-trained model, or when to use pre-trained model? When we lack of training data. For example, someone already trained the model like the cancer data to find out whether it is cancer or non-cancer. Okay, but the hospitals I am working is just like it's not much data for cancer and non-cancer. So, but I can here reuse the model which I've already developed by the researchers of hospital A, because it's the same kind of data. I just need to tune some kind of hyperparameters, my batch size, my learning rate based on my data, but the layering structure they have made, I can reuse that one. So that one is like lack of training data, but it should be same domain. It's not like they have trained with stroke data and you will use for your liver cancer data. No, the domain should be same or similar. Okay. Then the existing network means there already existing network that already pretend on a similar task. That the one I have already told you, like already a network is doing the same thing. Then why I will do by myself? So it is just a time consuming process. Just use the existing data. And if have same input, the same thing. If they have the liver cancer, the same thing. If you are using the liver cancer data, why not use the same model? Okay, and the save and time and resources, that's the advantages, and also improve the model performance. Maybe with that model, with that data, they have achieved 80% accuracy, but with the addition of your data, the maybe the model will learn some new parameters, new feature, the accuracy might be improved. So that one also another thing. In that case, we are also using pre-trained model. This is like the advantages we have already discussed. It saves time, it improved accuracy, it give a better generalization. Better generalization means like one student yesterday asked me if we have developed a model in India, can it work on US or somewhere else? That part is just like if we don't know if that how can if we like design a model at India, maybe we use it, we can like already we freeze that model and we'll take to that model, and with little bit hyperparameter tuning it might work at the US hospital. So it can we can say okay, the same model can work in India and same model can work in US, so it can like a model general ability and versatility. Of course, different hospital, different data, so that one also reduce label data, because if with less number of data, if we can in a model is already ready and with less number of data, then if we can get better accuracy, then the labeling part is already time reduced, and of course reduce overfitting, because you can get variety of data. So that is the advantages of the transfer learning. And of course, the disadvantages I have discussed, like if you have different domain, if for example, if someone train the machine with cat and dog, but you're like you want to classify cancers. So in that case, the transfer learning is not a very good idea, because their model is pre-trained with some other type of data set, your some other type of data set. So it is not a good idea to consider that one. However, currently why most of the person also using pre-trained model, the pre-trained data set actually using ImageNet, generally called ImageNet, is an this ImageNet actually this ImageNet data, it can consist of 40,000 of classes. Okay, it consider around the world like around 40,000, like anything, any animal diseases or many things, and they were wrapped inside a function, like we can just call them like ImageNet. Okay, and we can reuse that one. So here, what we if we consider the weights from the ImageNet, so what we need to only need to change the modify the hyperparameters, the data augmentation parameters, some convolutional or pooling layers, and some dense layer function. Because the model which is trained with the ImageNet data set, we generally call it the ImageNet, all the sequential models or functional models, they have already the researchers already trained with them with the 40,000 or maybe more than that, because the time when I was doing the research at that time, it's like 40,000. I think it is increasing now more. So it can give you the better accuracy. So then the fine tuning strategy, if you consider the pre-trained model, what you need to do, either either you can do train the entire model, you no need to modify anything. Take the pre-trained model is there, just call the model, use it. And this one is like the strategy one. Strategy two is like some layers you can modify from the pre-trained model and rest keep as it is. Or you just the convolutional base means like the data feature extraction layer. Totally, you can freeze the convolutional layers, and only the last layer, the dense layers, you can modify something. There are three strategy also. Then the thing is decision related to the pre-trained CNN model. In which scenario you will use the pre-trained model or customized CNN model. Also, there is a concept of size similarity matrix. Size similarity matrix means you will consider the size of the considered data, like how many number of images you have, and also the similarity of the pre-trained of the data set, like the data set you have and the model already trained with the pre-trained data set. The first thing is, if we'll consider the dataset size, considering the size similarity matrix, here is like first quadrant is like if you have large dataset but different from the pre-trained model dataset. Okay, means this quadrant you will match with this one. Okay, if you have large data set, your data set size is very large but very different from the pre-trained the model which I've already trained, then at that time it is advised, okay, you go for the whole customization, train your model like from the you need to write your code from the scratch, because your data set also very large and no way it's similar with the pre-trained data set. If you go for the this one, you have large data set, but it is similar to your pre-trained model. then what you will do, generally freeze the convolutional base, like the third one, the feature extractor part. You no need to modify any, only the last dense layer or flattened layer with little modification you can do, and you can get better accuracy. And you have small data set, but very different from the pre-trained data set, but your data set size is very small. So here you can go for create some layers from the convolutional layer, but some convolutional layer you can tune as well as the dense layers. Okay. And you have also small data set, and similar to the pre-trained model, just use the pre-trained model with little bit hyperparameter tuning. So this is like the mathematical concept of considering size similarity matrix. Whether you go for the customization, and if you go for the pre-trained model, how much customization you can do. Here, like some coding I want to show, like if we'll go for the pre-trained model, what it is like this, the similar things we'll apply, we'll like import the required classes and functions, and the optimizers and everything. And here you can see, because we go for the pre-trained model for the BGG16, I have already shown you the layer structure. Here we don't need to discuss about the layer structure. From the Keras, from the application, they have already this BGG16, which have already trained with 40,000 of data set. We have just import this as a function. And in this, they have already all the network structure, exception, BGG16, RESTnet, MobileNet, DenseNet, EfficientNet, all this network. You just need to import them as a function. Then what I did, I have like a function BGG fit model. Then this is my input shape. Then the best model is BGG16, and this is like the weight. This is the ImageNet that I have already already trained with 40,000 data set. I just need to call weights from the ImageNet and include top is equal to false. Include top false means the convolutional base is completely free. I don't want to modify anything in the convolutional layer part. What I have done, I have just only modify, like I have added some dropout function, I have changed some added some batch normalization layer and changes in the dense layer. No more modification in that. So only the dense layer part, the final layer part. So this is the example how pre-trained model is used. Before that, there is no layer or anything. We just need to call this function. Okay. So this is like how the pre-trained model we can work. Then tips for transfer learning, what you need to do first, choose a related task, what you want to do, and what type of classification you want to do, and choose a pre-trained model, like you go for BGG16 or ResNet or what kind of model, and modify the pre-trained model, like you will go for the whole customization, partial customization, or full customization, and go for the fine-tuning the model, understand the limitation, because every pre-trained model has some limitation, please understand that, and avoid overfitting. Overfitting means you should be careful if the pre-trained model is only trained with a particular type of data. Maybe you already have a variety type of data, you might not get better accuracy on that. And monitor the performance, and of course use data augmentation technique, because some of the pre-trained model, they might not consider that technique. So that one is like some tips for the transfer learning. Okay, thank you. This is all from this section. Like I told, the half an hour I'll dedicate for the question and answer from the previous section and this sections. Please feel free to ask.
Ma'am, I want to ask about that. Aren't we using the tenfold or fourfold method to distinguish the training and test data? Like you have to take in images.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Like the one, like the training set, validation set, and test set. Okay, that part you are asking me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that is two way I have mentioned. One thing is, let's say you have 100 images. Okay, total you have 100 images. You can make a static one, 80 images for training, 10 images validation, 10 images testing. Okay, that is one way, but that is not an efficient way, because some researchers said might that 10 images you like already occupied for your testing, maybe that 10 images is very easy, so that the model can predict. How about you can go for a cross validation in general? It's just like that 100 images. Okay, you can go for every time, like fast, maybe you can divide it into 10 batches. If you go for 10 fold cross validation, fast fold one, testing. At that time, rest 9, you go for the
But yes,
training
ma'am.
one. Yeah, then second one, fold 2 is testing, fold 1, and the rest 8 is go for the training one. That one 5-fold or 10-fold cross validation generally we do. In that way, if we do, then our model can learn all the feature and it can predict the accuracy considering all the hundreds of data. Then we can take an average out of this
Yes, ma'am.
10-fold. Let's say your fold 1 give 90% accuracy, fold 2 give 80% accuracy, fold 3 gives 99% accuracy. Then we take an average. So in our paper, we generally give all the folds accuracy, then give the minimum, the average one. Then the reviewer can get a clear picture. Okay,
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, another question,
is
like
clear?
in the
Oh,
PDF, you have in the bird section, I guess, the image
uh-huh.
quality. So we are using the normal image to create the pixelated image for the machine learning, or something other process is going on there.
Uh,
Ma'am, there is a bird
okay.
picture
You are
actually.
talking about this one? This one?
No, ma'am. It was on the topic of the bird, but it's like going from a high resolution to a pixelated image.
Oh, this one,
Yes,
this
ma'am,
one.
this one, this one.
This one, yeah. We are not going to go to anything. The machine will do through each convolutional layer. Here I want to show you, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
If will pass through the past, this is from the low level feature. When the bird image pass through the past convolutional block from this block, okay, the
Yes, ma'am.
output is like this. When it reaches to the last convolutional block, this one, it looks like this, okay. It's like actually I print these values from the feature maps in between the convolutional
Okay,
layers.
ma'am.
So this one is like we no need to do. How I want to show you how the machine learn the features, okay. From the human eye, it's very easy to distinguish. For the machine, this one is the important features, okay.
Okay.
This one, like we say, CNN model is learning the feature. So how it is learning? In which way it is learning? It is learning through actually pixel. I print it as an image to show it, but actually it is like some pixel values. The machine is learning actually.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, when we apply synthetic data or augmented data, should we
Uh-huh.
apply it when we apply synthetic data or
Uh-huh.
augmented data?
Uh-huh.
Should we apply it before train test split or after the train test split?
Okay, okay. Before that, before what you said, train test split or after that one? There is two way
Yes.
actually. Yeah.
Okay.
The one, actually, 2 times I have mentioned these things. The past thing I have mentioned these things here, we are preparing the input data here. When we are preparing the input data, like before the training, before the splitting, at that time, we can also do that one. Actually, this one I always advise to the student when they have very less number of data. For some rare diseases, we have like less than 500 or 600 images only. So in that cases, I always like do go for some like the before the training and testing data, like division, go for the augmentation when you have very less number of data, actually maybe less than 1000. Okay.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
But when you have but when you have high number of data, but the similarity, like very like the similarity between two data is very like high. For example, when you go for the ischemic and non-ischemic data, actually the similarity is very, the ischemic is looks like the normal data. At that time, I told the students go for the internal augmentation, because through internal augmentation, if we'll do something, then the model can know there is some the variety of data which can be helpful for the distinguishing. So I can give you a conclusion. What from my experience, like when we have very less number of data, less than 1000, we generally go for the external augmentation before the training and testing set. And when we have the data set is very similar kind type of diseases, very difficult to distinguish normal and abnormal, I generally said go for the internal augmentation.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
I think in chat some
Ma'am, I want to ask,
yeah.
suppose we have only numerical data. For
Uh-huh.
that, are there any, what kind of techniques should we use to extract the features? Like how many features we are going to extract from the
Uh,
data set? We have
oh,
only numeric data.
Oh, that one is like you have asked a very good question. That one actually another type of data like we have used for the clinical records or everything. We have one patient maybe have 10 to 15 features like gender, age, its blood test value, its hypertension value, its smoking parameters, and different type of blood test. In that cases also we have some feature selection methods actually. That also another type of presentation and the type of research there we have applied how to select the best the best features. We have used different type of SAP feature extraction, SHAP. So that one is just like gives us you can read it, SHAP, you can write it down, then it can give
Yes,
a
ma'am.
feature,
Thank you, ma'am.
influential features. Okay, it can tell you. Actually, this one, I think we have just published this paper. So that one we have actually applied SHAP to find out which liver, like the function, the clinical features are the dominant to predict the benign and the cancer one.
Thank you,
Okay,
ma'am.
because in the last USA we have good conference and I have that presentation on that. You can have a look on that. But the thing is, you can more read on SHAP, SAP feature extraction.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
I have a question
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
that last class that you said that researchers are trying to reduce number of parameters. So
Mm-hmm.
mostly like I have seen that AI model versions with more number of parameters pose more
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. So is it
Mm-hmm.
always the case?
More number of parameters is the more intelligence?
Yeah, like mostly ChatGPT
Oh,
versions with more number of parameters posing more intelligence. But you said that researchers are trying to reduce number of
yeah.
parameters.
ChatGPT said like more number of parameters and more number of like increase the performance, right?
No, I'm talking about the models. Like there are a
Oh,
ChatGPT
okay.
model with 350 parameters and ChatGPT model with billion parameters.
Yeah, that's okay. That's true. Okay. I can tell you it's a myth actually. Earlier, if we increase the number of parameters, the accuracy is increased. No, that's not at all true. If you will find some good publication and you can write how the network parameters reduce. Actually, my last semester of my PhD, I have done those researches how to reduce the network parameters, maintaining the same accuracy or increasing the accuracy actually. That's my last semester I had that work, but I cannot show you now because it's not yet published. Because we find the network parameter is what? The network parameter is nothing but the connection between one convolutional layers, those operations, the addition, multiplication, those operations. Okay. These are actually the number of parameters. So if we will reduce the number of layers, then or the number of filter size or anything, those mathematical operation, if we will reduce, then the number of parameters will also the increase. And if unnecessary, why we will maintain those parameters? So that's the thing. Then another thing is what type of data are you using? If you are using to classify, I just mentioned today morning, if you want to classify a tree and a river or a tree or a book, they are very different in their features. One layman can also say this is a tree, this is a river. So in such cases, why we are going to take a VGG class 16 class model where the parameters is 130,000 billion parameters, because with two layers of convolution I can within less than one, like 200 or 2000 or 3000 parameters I can classify it is a tree and it is a river. Then why I go for that much of number of parameters? That also depends on what your application, what your data size. Okay. And this thing you have asked about the OpenAI model, the ChatGPT model, this one is a very complex model. Every day it needs to handle many researchers, many, like we can say now that the data type it considered is very large. So in that case, it need to have large parameters because it is handling so many things. So that's why that's thing. In that case, the number of parameters is increasing because the number of handling the application capacity also increasing. The GPT-1 is answering only yes or no. Yes, you are right. Now ChatGPT 5.3, if you are asking whether this one is correct or not, it can tell you correct and why it is correct, and if it is wrong, why it is not wrong. It is explaining you in 2 pages. For this explanation, of course, you need some more parameters. So that's the thing also. Like if something is caught by a knife, why you need a sword? And if something you need to cut by sword, then the knife is not applicable to that scenario. So that's the application wise the parameter selection is also there. So some researchers said why for some kind of data we need this model, and some researchers said this model is not efficient for this type of data. So there is an debating and research issue is there. That's why I mentioned.
And is there any mathematical way to calculate that we can reduce the parameter and gain that same accuracy?
Uh, we cannot there is no mathematical thing like we cannot reduce, but we can calculate the number of parameters and everything. That one I will discuss in the last session of my on the 28th of past session, data imbalancing problem. Actually, on that day, I'm going to show you how the flops, how the number of parameters and how they are calculated. And when you are going for the reduction, actually some researchers, you can go for some like article reading. They have their own mathematical model way how to reduce the number of parameters on that. Okay, because there are some mathematical issue. This is like there is no proper, there is a proper, like formula. You can calculate the number of parameters in each layer. There is a particular formula. You can calculate the number of flops, the number of MCS, the number of small s, capital and capital flops. All those you can calculate it. But for to reduction that, whether what to reduce, how to reduce, at what time you need to reduce, there is some particular rule, and that rule actually researches. So some researchers they develop the mathematical model to do that part.
I mean, one last question.
Yeah, please.
That you said that probabilistic hyper parameter optimization, it's used at industry level because it's really powerful. So in biomedical image processing, do we prefer this the most? I mean,
No. Actually, no. Probabilistic approach is when we have a very large type of data. I think ChatGPT, they people might use the probabilistic model because they have multiple applications they need to handle. But if you will go for a single application study or a dual application study, generally probabilistic approach is not good. Probability approach, we can say it's kind of like a probability. We are not sure about that. We can say maybe with some probability you can take some hyperparameter and hypertune that one, but this is not advisable way for the single application we are doing, especially for the medical data.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other question?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, does data augmentation affect the performance of the model?
Oh, yeah. That's a very good question. Actually, you have asked me. That one also, I can say it's depend upon your application. Most cases, like if I say if your data set is very large with a multi variety of data, you really don't need data augmentation. If you'll apply data augmentation to that, then your accuracy will not very good. That one I saw it because when we go for we have an application actually. We want to predict whether the patient is eating healthy food or it is not eating healthy food, and we have a variety of images of data and with different angle and different one, and when I applied the data augmentation to that, actually there is no improved in the accuracy. It's just like even if I use the data augmentation, doesn't it impact much because I have already that variety of data. So it's just like I can say the complexity or the time, the wastage of time of the model. But when I go for my ischemic and non-ischemic data classification, because here the data is very similar, okay? So at that time, I have to go for augmentation because the machine needs to machine needs to see if with different angles or with different data augmentation, like different way, can it differentiate the ischemic or the normal? But if we'll not use data augmentation, then I didn't get good accuracy. So the first thing, if you have very large data size and variety of data, it's not like you have one large data set, but the variety is not there. So data augmentation you should use. But you have the large data, like a small data, and also variety is not there. I always go for the data augmentation. So that one also depend on your data size and variety that you need to check.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, one last question. Is there any
Yeah.
book or reference material you'd suggest if one wants to develop their own CNN model?
Oh, actually, currently there are many resources I can say. Means like if you go for this course, I will share it with you. But another thing is like this one is very basic one, just for your understanding. I think in GitHub you can get many codes actually. Generally for the student homework, I didn't share them the code. I always tell them where to find out in the GitHub. I generally give them one application. For example, last time I give them to find out the tumor and non-tumor classification and those things. And I told them you can download the code from the GitHub. I told them, but what modification you have done, you need to show me. So that I think GitHub is the most like the appropriate one. You can go to find some basic CNN code from that and you can run by yourself. You'll get to know many things.
Okay, thank you
Because,
so much, ma'am.
yeah. Abhishek is asking what is the average time it takes to train an AI model with considerable output accuracy. Oh dear, that is purely depends upon also the the hardware capacity also, not only your program capacity, like how many layers in your CNN or how many parameters in your CNN. It's like what type of hardware constraint also you are using. If you are using a very good like RTX GPU, maybe 10,000 images, 50,000 images, your training will finish within 1 hour. But if you are using normal laptop with a very like NVIDIA capacity, if no NVIDIA capacity or very less NVIDIA like the GPU capacity, maybe it will take 5 to 6 hours. So hardware constraint is also one of the important things, especially for biomedical image. So that one, we cannot say how much time it will take. It depends upon your hardware constraint also. Abhishek, I am clear to you? Okay. Any other question?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, one doubt is that, ma'am, like which field, like we are dividing the images into certain pixel area to feed it into the CNN, right? So, ma'am,
No, no pixel area means?
ma'am,
So
like
sorry.
we are taking a picture, so like that the bird one. So we are
Uh-huh.
dividing it into pixelated area, which in white values are one or black values are zero for understanding. So,
Yeah, that one is like for model. Actually, model is considering in that way. Uh, Actually, it is a pixels. Yeah. When we print it, we can see like this. Yeah. Then your question?
ma'am, like what are the field? Like, ma'am, there is a military field, there is healthcare field, there is a
Mm-hmm.
another mechanical or any
Mm-hmm.
aerospace field. So different visualization and feature mapping needs different type of pixel data, or it uses the same process or same amount of
It
data
is used the
to
same
train the
process
model.
actually because it's the convolutional layer feature extraction. Okay. It depends upon actually because the layer, networking structure is the same. Okay, the number of filters, and if you use the default one, okay, you don't have used your own weight initializer or anything. Just use the BGG16 model, and any type of data you will give to the model, it will print. It will give you like this. The output will like this one only.
Okay, ma'am.
But if you will change your, because BGG16, they have used some kind of weight initializer or something. Suppose you, for example, you will use your weight initializers. You are used like truncated normal class or Glorot normal class. Then considering those initializer value means you are going to modify these values. So when that will be operations in your image based on your pixel and based on your weights, the appearance also changes, the feature map appearance. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Abhishek is also asking, ma'am, just to clarify about the dropout part is to increase the efficiency for an AI learning the pattern that it takes less time to give output, or it is to more accuracy output, or maybe both. The dropout part is to increase the efficiency. Okay, I'll go to the dropout part. What I understood from your question, let me answer it. If it is correct, let me know. Okay. What's the why the dropout comes to the picture? If I'll tell you, dropout comes to the picture to handle the overfitting of the neurons. What is the overfitting of the neurons? When the each neurons is connected to the other neurons. So sometimes because they will give some prediction based on those feature map values. So sometimes some neurons feature map is so influenced that it will dominate the values of or the opinions of the other neurons. So at that time, what that neuron will say, that one is the accuracy we generally got. So that one we generally called it is the overfitting issue. So that's why dropout comes to the picture. Why not at every epoch we will just drop some of the neurons, drop some of the connections, or drop some of the some of the concepts they have used, like how to introduce some kind of dropping out the neurons behavior or neurons view towards the output. So that's where dropout comes to the picture. Then it will come is to increase the efficiency of the increase AI learning pattern. Yeah, truly it will increase the efficiency AI's learning pattern. It's not AI learning pattern, it's the model's learning pattern. Because if some of the neurons will drop, maybe these neurons will drop at past epoch, so the features, so the machine can only learn the features from only this part of the neurons. Then at that next in the next epoch, I will drop these two neurons. Then the machine will learn from this neuron, and these neurons, then another pattern. So in that way, that also there will be no overfitting issue. The machine can take the view of all the neurons at a time. Then it can predict so well. So yeah, it will increase the AI's efficiency. That's why dropout comes to the picture, to increase the efficiency of the learning. Abhishek, clear? Okay, thanks. Then any more questions?
Still, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, like if we get into this internship in KIT, so we are not so able to do the programming part in early stages. So are we going to learn it from somewhere, like it is
Oh,
Python
yeah,
mostly?
totally. Of course, that Sar can better actually answer it because we are going to have some collaborations, and if you have don't background of anything, okay, you need we can give you 1 month or 2 months and some learning resources to learn those things. But of course, you need to learn it faster. We cannot like spend
Yeah,
months
yeah,
to learn
ma'am.
it. Yeah,
Ma'am,
no, we
while
are
we
there
are
to advise you what to learn, what not to learn, and we can give you the goals. But and of course, it depends upon how much you can learn and based on your interest. Yeah, but Sar can better answer these questions.
yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other?
Any other questions are there? I don't think so. No, I think.
Okay. Okay, if no more questions, then I think maybe today some concepts we have discussed, as you are very new, you might not know these things. This video is with you, and you can do
Yes,
some
today I'll upload the
self-study.
video. Yes, after 1
Yeah,
hour, yeah, I'll upload.
yeah. And then you can do some self-study and you can then correlate what I'm talking and what exactly the things are there. So because in one workshop, of course, you cannot understand all the things. It's just like it's just a continuation. It's just a starting point. So no worry if we have also very good researchers, talk in the coming week I found. So you can please pay attention to that. They are discussing a variety of topics. So please gather some more knowledge and ask the questions and doubts. Okay. Uh, Ma'am, should we practice some course? Yeah, of course, because last like the student asked, I think GitHub is the best one. You can just go for a small application. We generally go for the tumor, non-tumor classification. People go for some medical or X-ray, COVID or non-COVID. They have very like a very good course are there, and I can also share some links to Professor Das to share it with you. Very small code, and you can run in your laptop also. You don't need very like high resource, and you can get the output. Uh, GitHub is the best resource, and I'll also find some time to give you some links to run some codes. Even Google Colab, you can directly run it. Think Abhishek okay? Okay.
Right. Abhishek is traveling actually. Okay,
Oh
then.
yeah.
Thank you, Sulagna ma'am.
Okay.
I think
Thank you,
next
and wish you all a Merry Christmas and next week.
same to you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you.